Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on a pretty mind-bending journey through the ultimate existential ledger. We're going to look at a statistical map that charts out the end of literally everything, starting from your own life, moving through the fate of human civilization, and zooming all the way out to the physical universe itself. It's a fascinating, structured look at exactly how things close.
It all boils down to one incredibly profound question. Does everything eventually end? Well, to find an honest answer to that, we really have to start at the smallest, most personal scale possible, and then slowly zoom all the way out to the absolute limits of thermodynamics and philosophy. Let's take that ride.
Section 1. The End of You. Individual Mortality. Let's start with the most intimate data point on our ledger, the individual me table. All right, so let's dive right into the data. When we look at individual mortality, the top causes are cancer at 27%, heart disease and stroke close behind at 24%, accidents at 12%, and dementia at 8%. Now, actuaries tell us this is remarkably accurate for modern humans looking at roughly 40 more years of life. But here's why this actually matters to us. From a purely mathematical standpoint, an end is just an end. But from a lived perspective, how it happens matters deeply. A sudden end versus a prolonged one completely changes the quality of that remaining time. It's the final chapter of your life, sure, but it's also the very first chapter of grief for the loved ones you leave behind.
Section 2. The End of Us. Existential Risk. Now we're going to zoom out from the individual to the middle scales, modern civilization, and humanity as a biological species. So, looking at the next 100 years for modern civilization, experts from places like Oxford and Cambridge highlight three main threats. We've got artificial intelligence topping the list at 22%, climate change at 20%, and pandemics at 12%. Now, notice what's totally missing there. Natural disasters. Experts are telling us that these human-made anthropogenic risks are vastly more imminent than anything the planet might naturally throw our way.
And this brilliantly illustrates a absolutely crucial distinction at this middle scale. When we're talking about civilization, the how is the whole game. We face reversible ends, things like economic collapse or political instability. Now, don't get me wrong, those are devastating, but we can recover from them. But then we have irreversible ends. Runaway AI, extreme climate change, nuclear war. These are the ones that determine whether humanity literally gets another chance to build a society. If we look just a bit further out, say a 100 to 300-year window for humanity's actual biological survival, the threats mirror civilization's risks almost exactly. Artificial intelligence at 20%, climate change at 18%, and nuclear war at 12%. This window essentially acts as a great filter. It's a gauntlet of advanced tech and climate tipping points that we absolutely have to navigate to survive as a species.
What's truly fascinating about this, though, is how clearly it highlights our own agency. Just contrast ends by choice with ends by physics. Our absolute biggest existential risks, like AI and climate change, are choices. They're sitting right there at the top of the probability list. Ends by physics, like, say, an asteroid impact or a supervolcanic eruption, those are way down the list at just 5%. We've got planetary defense systems and just plain old statistical rarity on our side for the natural stuff. So our biggest threats? They're ourselves. Our choices matter so much more than physics here.
Section 3. The End of Everything. The Cosmic Scale. Okay, prepare your mind to slow down and expand, because we are zooming way, way out now. Past biology, past society, straight into the cold, hard thermodynamics of the cosmos.
Let's see how this builds on a cosmic timeline. We start with our own, under 40-year individual horizons, pass through a few hundred years of civilization, and then make a massive jump to 500 million years for life on Earth. And then we go all the way out to 100 trillion years for life in the universe. It's a staggering, honestly awe-inspiring jump in time frames that totally changes how we even think about an ending.
Looking at that first huge leap about 500 million years from now, well, long before our sun actually explodes, its luminosity naturally increases by about 10% every billion years. Eventually, that extra heat is going to trigger a moist greenhouse effect here on Earth. It'll evaporate the oceans and make complex, multicellular life completely impossible. And if we jump way ahead to 100 trillion years, we hit what astrophysicists call the degenerate age. This is when the very last low-mass red dwarf stars burn out, leaving behind a completely dark universe. It marks the absolute end of star-driven biological life. At this extreme macro scale, endings are completely inevitable. They're totally impersonal. There's no moral difference, no alternate universe version of events, and nobody to blame. It is literally just thermodynamics at work.
Section 4. Beyond the end. What doesn't end? So, what actually happens when we reach the very bottom of our existential ledger? Let's pivot to the concepts where our math and physics finally just break down entirely.
The really interesting point here lies in concepts like the multiverse, or source, or God, depending on your personal philosophical framework. For both of these concepts, an ending might just be not possible. If a multiverse exists, the decay of one tiny bubble universe doesn't even make a dent in the infinite matrix. And an ultimate source, by definition, operates entirely outside of time and causality. The implication here is just staggering. If something at the very foundation doesn't end, then everything above it, us, our civilization, our universe, is by definition temporary. And temporary things are measured solely by what they were like while they were actually here.
Section 5. The value of the interval. Cosmic boundaries. This brings us to the most deeply personal part of our explainer today. We're pulling all the way back into the philosophy of what it actually means to exist within these cosmic boundaries. We're looking at the value of the interval.
To really understand that interval, we have to take an honest look at the default conditions of consciousness. The source material describes these as the structural deficits of existing. Basically, the average being experiences too much darkness and not enough light, way too much beyond our control and not enough agency, too much randomness and not enough meaning, and too much mindlessness without enough presence. Think about it for a second. Our entire ledger, naming these threats, assigning probabilities, estimating the timeframes, these are really all just control-seeking behaviors. We're trying to fight back against these exact 4 deficits. Let's break down the actual lived cost of those imbalances. Too much darkness means finding the positive requires real, active effort, while the negative, that just finds you. Being beyond control leads to learned helplessness, where even your free choices start to feel scripted. Randomness results in suffering without a narrative. It's just pure noise. And mindlessness creates this autopilot existence where the interval of your life just collapses, and you realize you were there but never actually present. So the big takeaway here is that light, agency, meaning, and presence, they aren't factory settings. They don't just happen to us by default. They require active, daily cultivation against a really steep gradient.
Which brings us to this incredibly beautiful thought from the source material. Ends don't cancel out existence. They complete it. Just sit with that for a second. A song isn't less beautiful simply because it ends. In fact, it actually needs an ending to even be a song. The time while we are existing is where all the value is actually felt. The ending simply gives shape to it.
So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Knowing the math, knowing the grand cosmic timelines, and knowing the steep gradient of our everyday existence, will you choose to saturate your interval? Treating presence and meaning not as guaranteed expectations, but as daily practices is exactly how we make our temporary, time-bound existence truly matter. Thanks so much for joining me on this incredible zoom out, and keep cultivating that interval.